My phone was face down on the kitchen table. I had already read the message 3 times, but I picked it up and read it a 4th time, just to be sure I hadn't misunderstood. "Stop calling me. I mean it. You're suffocating me. Don't contact me again." The timestamp said March 14th, 2023, 9:47 in the evening. I set the phone back down, face down again, next to a cup of chamomile tea that had gone completely cold. I hadn't touched the tea in over an hour. I just sat there in my kitchen in Boise, Idaho, and listened to the refrigerator hum. That was the last thing my son said to me for 7 months. The silence that followed was its own kind of pain. My birthday came in June. I turned 74. Derek didn't call. He didn't send a card, not even a text. I drove myself to the Albertsons on Fairview Avenue and bought a small chocolate cake from the bakery case. I brought it home, cut 1 slice, and sat at the table where I had just read that message. I ate the slice alone. The rest of the cake went in the trash 2 days later. I tried to sing to myself that night, just the first line of the birthday song. I couldn't finish it. Then, on October 9th, 2023, at 6:03 in the morning, my phone rang. I was already awake. I'm always awake at 6. I looked at the screen and saw his name, Derek. I answered it. His voice was shaking. "Mom, I need $15,000. I need it by Friday or I lose everything." I held the phone away from my ear for 3 full seconds. I counted them. Then I brought it back. And what did I say? I said, "No," and I meant it. Now, I want you to understand something before we go any further. I didn't say no out of spite. I didn't say no because I had spent 7 months being hurt, and I wanted him to feel it. I said no because 2 weeks before that phone call, I had driven across town and sat in a small office on Orchard Street, across from an estate lawyer named Patricia Voss. And Patricia had placed a single sheet of paper on the table in front of me, looked me in the eye, and said, "Mrs. Harmon, your son has already taken far more than $15,000 from you. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go back to the beginning. Let me go back to the Sunday night when my son sat at my kitchen table, wouldn't look me in the eye, and his wife smiled while suggesting I sell my home. That's where this really started. Good day, dear listeners. It's Lorraine. I'm glad you're here with me today. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end. And let me know which city or state you're listening from. That way I can see how far this has traveled. I want to say this before I go any further. This story was not easy for me to decide to tell. I spent months turning it over in my mind, wondering if I should. I'm not sharing it to hurt my son. I'm sharing it because somewhere out there, right now, there is a mother sitting in a quiet house, wondering what she did wrong. She's replaying every conversation, every holiday, every small moment, trying to find the things she said or didn't say that broke everything. I want her to hear this. I want her to know that sometimes you didn't do anything wrong at all. If this story reaches even one person who needed to hear it, that's enough for me. Please hit the like button now so this video can find the people who need it. And please stay until the very end, because the moment in Patricia's office is the part that no one would believe if I hadn't kept every single piece of paper. I still have the folder, manila, with Patricia's handwriting on the tab. I'll tell you exactly what was inside. And tell me where you are. I'm in Boise. The leaves were just turning when all of this finally came to an end. I always read the comments. I like knowing I'm not talking to a wall. Now, let me tell you who I am. My name is Margaret Harmon. I'm 74 years old. I live in a 4-bedroom house in Boise, Idaho. The same house Carl and I bought in 1991. I spent 28 years as a library aide at Hillcrest Elementary, checking out books, cataloging returns, reading to first graders on rainy Fridays. I retired in 2017. My husband Carl passed away in January 2019 from pancreatic cancer. We were married 43 years. Carl was the steady one in our family. He never raised his voice. He never spent $1 without thinking about it twice. When he died, I thought the hard part of my life was behind me. I was wrong. Derek is our only child. He's 46 years old. He lives in Meridian, Idaho, which is about 20 minutes from my house. He's been married to Jenna since 2018. They have 2 children, Olivia, who is 11, and Mason, who is 8. I adored those grandchildren. I baked snickerdoodles for them every other Sunday. I drove them to swim practice when Jenna had conflicts. I kept a drawer in my kitchen stocked with crayons and watercolor paper, specifically for their visits. I was the grandmother who showed up, every time, without being asked. When Carl died, I managed the estate on my own. He left behind our paid-off house, which was worth about $340,000 at the time. He had $127,500 in savings. There was a small pension and a life insurance payout of $85,000. I wasn't wealthy, but I was careful, because Carl taught me to be careful. I kept a green spiral notebook on the kitchen counter, and I wrote every expense in it by hand, every single month. In 2020, Derek told me he and Jenna wanted to move into a bigger house. They needed help with the down payment. I wrote him a cashier's check for $22,000. There was no loan agreement, no paperwork, just the check and a hug in the driveway. He said, "Mom, I'll pay you back." I said, "Don't worry about it." That was my first mistake. Not the giving, but the not documenting. Carl would have written something down. I didn't. After Derek married Jenna, things shifted. Not dramatically at first. The visits got a little shorter. The phone calls came a little less often. Jenna was polite when she was at my house, but she was distant. She didn't ask me questions. She didn't share things with me. She moved through my home like I was furniture in a room she was walking through. I noticed. I always noticed things like that. 28 years shelving books and cataloging returns teaches you to notice what's missing. Then came February 2023. Derek and Jenna came to my house for Sunday dinner. I made pot roast. Carl's recipe. The one with the onion gravy and the carrots cut thick. The grandchildren weren't with them. Derek said they had plans. Jenna sat at my kitchen table with her arms crossed, scrolling through her phone from the moment she sat down. When I asked about Olivia and Mason, she looked up just long enough to say, "They had stuff," and went back to her screen. After dinner, Derek said he wanted to talk about the house situation. I didn't know there was a house situation. He explained that Jenna thought it would be smarter. That was the word he used. Smarter. For me to sell my home now while the market was strong and move into an assisted living apartment. He said Jenna had found a place on Eagle Road. $3,200 a month. "You don't need all this space, Mom. It's a 4-bedroom. It's too much for you." I sat very still. I told Derek I was healthy. I was active and independent. I volunteered at the library. I mowed my own lawn. I looked at my son, my only child, and said, "Derek, I'm fine here. This is my home." He wouldn't look at me when I said it. He looked at the table. Then Jenna looked up from her phone. She said, flatly, "It's just practical, Margaret. You're sitting on equity you're not using." And then Derek reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and slid a piece of paper across the table to me. It was a printout of my home's estimated value, $365,000. Someone had highlighted the number in yellow marker. My daughter-in-law had printed out the value of my home and highlighted it like a coupon. I declined, quietly and firmly. I said this was my home and I would be staying in it. Derek sighed. Jenna stood up, pushed her chair back, and said, "We tried." They were out the door by 7:40 in the evening. I washed the dishes alone. I noticed that Derek hadn't touched the pot roast. My son used to eat 3 helpings of that roast. Carl used to joke that Derek could smell it from the driveway. That detail stayed with me. It told me something had already changed, long before that dinner. 1 week later, I called Derek to invite the grandchildren over for spring break. He didn't answer. I called again the next day. No answer. I texted him. His red receipts were on. He saw the message and didn't reply. I called 4 more times over the next 10 days. Then, on March 14th, the text came. I already told you what it said. After that message, I went into a kind of quiet grief. Not dramatic, not loud, just hollow. I replayed every conversation I'd had with Derek over the past year, trying to find the place where I went wrong. I lost 6 pounds in 3 weeks without trying. My neighbor Linda Forsyth, who is 71 and lives 2 houses down, noticed. She brought soup over one afternoon. Chicken noodle. She sat with me while I told her what had happened. She listened to everything. Then she put her hand on mine and said, "Margaret, check your bank accounts. I'm serious. When family cuts you off and starts talking about your house at the same time, you go check your money." I drove to Wells Fargo on Milwaukee Street on March 28th, 2023. I asked the teller for printed statements going back 18 months. She handed me 22 pages. I took them home, sat at the kitchen table, and went through every line with a magnifying glass and a red pen. The kitchen was quiet, except for the wall clock ticking above the stove. I found them on page 7. 3 electronic transfers I had never authorized. $4,200. On September 12th, 2022, $3,800. On November 3rd, 2022, $5,500. On January 19th, 2023, all sent to an account number I did not recognize. Total, $13,500. I stared at those numbers until my hands shook. Then I circled each one in red and put the papers in a folder. The next morning, I called the bank. A fraud specialist named Ron asked me if anyone else had access to my account. I thought back to 2021. After Carl died, Derek had suggested I add him as a secondary signer on my checking account, in case I ever got sick and needed help paying bills. He said it was just in case. I believed him. He was my son. I asked the bank where those transfers had gone. Ron told me they had been routed to a joint account held by Derek R. Harmon and Jenna L. Harmon at a credit union in Meridian. My son hadn't just stopped calling me. He had been taking from me before he stopped. I did not call Derek. I did not text him. I did not say one word. I put the bank statements in the folder, wrote Derek Transfers on the tab in blue ink, and placed it in the top drawer of Carl's old desk. Linda had told me, "Don't react. Document." So that's what I did. In April 2023, I received a certified letter from Derek. Inside was a typed letter. The language didn't sound like him at all. It said I should consider signing a voluntary transfer of property interest for my home, naming Derek as co-owner, to simplify future estate matters. Attached was a one-page legal form with a notary line at the bottom. The wording was strange. Like someone who had watched legal videos online had tried to assemble something official-looking. I did not sign it. I put the letter in the manila folder. Then I photographed it with my phone and emailed the photo to myself. Timestamp: April 11th, 2023, 2:15 in the afternoon. Carl always said, "Paper doesn't lie, and neither does a date stamp." In May, Jenna came to my door alone. It was a Tuesday morning, 10:20 in the morning. She was smiling. She brought me a small succulent in a white pot. She sat in my living room and said she was sorry about how things had gone. Then she pivoted. She said Derek was under a lot of financial pressure. She said the house transfer would take a weight off everyone. Then she leaned forward and said that my being resistant was selfish. And then she said, Carl would have wanted Derek to be taken care of. She used my dead husband's name, like a tool. I almost dropped my coffee. I stayed completely calm. I said, "Jenna, I appreciate you coming by, but this is my home, and I won't be signing anything." The smile left her face. She said, "You're going to regret making this difficult." She stood, left the succulent on the table, and walked toward my front door. On the way out, I noticed her eyes drift down the hallway toward Carl's office. I noticed that. Then came June, my 74th birthday. No call, no card, no visit from the grandchildren. I checked my online banking and found that a transfer attempt for $2,000 had been flagged and blocked. I had quietly removed Derek as a secondary signer on my account in April, right after I found the statements. The bank had caught his attempt. He had tried again. On my birthday, I added the blocked transfer notification to the manila folder. Then I went to the store, bought a blue folder, and labeled it Timeline. I started a composition notebook and began writing everything down. Dates, exact quotes, times, names. I wasn't angry anymore. I was building something. By late August, Linda had a suggestion. She said she knew an estate lawyer, a woman named Patricia Voss, who had a solo practice on Orchard Street above a nail salon. Patricia was 58 years old and had 26 years of experience. Her specialty was elder financial abuse and estate protection, Linda said. Just go talk to her. That's all. I went. Patricia had reading glasses on a chain and a jar of butterscotch candies on her desk. The office smelled faintly of coffee and old paper. I trusted her in about 10 minutes. I brought both folders, the manila one and the blue one, and the composition notebook. She reviewed everything in complete silence for 40 minutes. I sat across from her and waited. When she finally looked up, she said, "Mrs. Harmon, what your son did isn't just a family disagreement. Under Idaho Code 18-1505, this qualifies as financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. You have grounds for a criminal referral and civil recovery." She explained it clearly. Derek had been added to my account as a fiduciary signer, not as an owner. He had a legal duty of care. He had breached it. The property transfer form Jenna had brought to my house had not been prepared by a licensed attorney and had been presented under pressure to a 74-year-old widow. Combined with the financial transfers, it formed a pattern consistent with elder financial exploitation under Idaho law, she said. "You have more power here than you think, but we have to move carefully." Then she told me something I hadn't known. Patricia had done a title search and reviewed public records. Derek and Jenna had taken out a $48,000 home equity line of credit on their Meridian house in October 2022. The same month, the first unauthorized transfer from my account appeared. They were over-leveraged. Their estimated credit card debt was around $31,000 across multiple accounts. Patricia set the papers down and said, "They didn't need your house because they love you. They needed your house because they're drowning." I sat with that for a moment. Then I told Patricia what I wanted to do. I asked her to draft a formal demand letter for repayment of the $13,500. I asked for a cease and desist on any further contact regarding the property transfer, and I asked her to revise my will and estate plan, removing Derek as my primary beneficiary and executor. I didn't cry when I said it. I had already cried enough. Patricia handed me a butterscotch candy and said, "Let's get to work." But she advised me not to send the demand letter yet, she said. "If your son is desperate enough, he'll come to you. When he does, we want you to be ready." She was right. Patricia said the hardest part of leverage is patience. I waited, and he came. October 9th, 2023, 6:03 in the morning. The phone rang. Derek's voice was tight and rushed. He said the bank was beginning foreclosure proceedings on his Meridian house. He was 3 months behind on his primary mortgage and behind on the home equity line as well. He said, "Mom, please, I know things have been bad, but I need help. The kids, Mom. Think about the kids." I listened without interrupting. I counted later. 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I had already talked through this exact scenario with Patricia. I knew what to say. I said, "Derek, I need to understand the full picture. Can you come to my house tomorrow? Bring Jenna. Bring all of your financial documents." He hesitated. Then, Okay, fine. Tomorrow." The next afternoon, Derek and Jenna arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Derek looked thinner. Jenna looked angry. They sat at the kitchen table. I had set out coffee and a plate of snickerdoodles, the same ones I used to make for Olivia and Mason. Neither of them touched a single cookie. Derek put a stack of papers on the table. Mortgage statements. The home equity balance. $41,200 still remaining. Credit card bills totaling $33,400 across 4 accounts. And a foreclosure warning letter dated September 28th. I reviewed every page. I wrote numbers in my notebook. Jenna said, "We wouldn't be in this situation if you just helped with the house like we asked." I said nothing. I kept writing. I told them I needed a few days to think it over. I said I wanted to speak with my financial advisor first. I didn't mention Patricia by name. I didn't mention either folder. Derek nodded. Jenna rolled her eyes. At the door, Derek said quietly, "Thanks, Mom." I touched his arm but didn't say anything back. That evening I called Patricia and read her every number. She said, "Now we have the complete picture. Here's what we're going to do." October 16th, 2023. Patricia's office on Orchard Street. 2 in the afternoon. I arrived early. I wore my navy cardigan and carried both folders. Patricia had the conference table set up already. Printed copies of the bank transfer records, the blocked transfer notification from June, the fraudulent property form, the Idaho elder abuse statute, printed out and highlighted, and my revised will. Derek arrived alone. Jenna had refused to come. He sat down across from me. He looked pale and very tired. Patricia introduced herself and said, "Mr. Harmon, your mother asked me to facilitate this meeting. She wants to resolve this fairly, but first, we need to address several things." Patricia laid the bank records on the table. The $4,200 transfer, the $3,800 transfer, the $5,500 transfer, each one highlighted. Each one with the destination account confirmed as Derek and Jenna's joint credit union account. Then the blocked $2,000 attempt from June. Derek's face went white. He said, Jenna handled the... I didn't know she. Patricia said calmly. "Mr. Harmon, your name is on that account. Your digital signature authorized the transfers. Under Idaho law, that is your responsibility." Then Patricia placed the property transfer form on the table. The one Jenna had brought to my living room with a smile and a succulent plant in a white pot. Patricia explained that it had not been drafted by a licensed attorney, that it had been presented under pressure to a 74-year-old widow, and that when combined with the financial transfers, it formed a documented pattern consistent with elder financial exploitation under Idaho Code 18-1505. She said it calmly, the way someone reads a grocery list out loud. But Derek looked like the floor had opened up beneath his chair. Patricia gave him 2 options. Option A, full restitution of $13,500, a written acknowledgement of wrongdoing, a formal no-contact order regarding my finances, and participation in a mediated repayment agreement. In exchange, I would not file a criminal complaint or a civil recovery suit. Option B, I file with the Ada County Prosecutor's Office and pursue civil action. Patricia said, "Your mother is offering you grace, Mr. Harmon. I would take it." Derek put his head in his hands. The room was completely silent, except for the faint sound of traffic from Orchard Street below. He stayed like that for a long time. Then he lifted his head and looked at me. His eyes were red. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I let it get. I'm sorry." I looked at him. My eyes were wet, but my voice was steady. I said, "I know, Derek, but sorry doesn't undo it. Sign the agreement." He picked up the pen. I heard it scratch against the paper in that quiet room. Patricia notarized the signature. It was done in 11 minutes. 11 minutes. To put right what took 7 months to break. On November 1st, 2023, the first restitution payment of $2,250 arrived by direct deposit into my new account at Idaho Central Credit Union. Patricia monitored compliance each month. The agreement required the full $13,500 to be repaid over 18 months at $750 per payment, beginning after that first deposit. Every month, on the 1st, the money arrives. I check it the way I used to check library books. Methodically, without emotion. Jenna did not take it well when Derek told her about the meeting. Within 3 weeks, she filed for legal separation. By December 2023, she had moved to her sister's house in Twin Falls, taking Olivia and Mason with her temporarily. Derek called me one evening and said, "Jenna left." I said, "I'm sorry, Derek," and I meant it. I didn't want his marriage to end. I wanted the stealing to end. Those are different things. Derek lost the Meridian house anyway. The foreclosure went through in January 2024. He moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on Ustick Road. He sold his truck and bought a used Honda Civic. He picked up extra shifts at the HVAC company where he works. My son went from a 4-bedroom house with a 2-car garage to a 2nd-floor apartment with a window unit. I didn't feel satisfaction when I learned that. I felt sorrow. Real sorrow. Word got out. Not from me, and not from Patricia. During the separation process, Jenna told a mutual friend about the financial exploitation case. That friend told Derek's supervisor at work. Derek wasn't fired. but his supervisor had a private conversation with him. Derek called me afterwards, humiliated, and said, "Everyone knows," I said. "Then let them see you making it right." For 2 months, I had no contact with the grandchildren. Then in February 2024, Derek brought Olivia and Mason to my house for a Saturday afternoon. When I opened the door, Olivia ran to me and wrapped both arms around my waist. Mason hung back by the steps the way he does when he's unsure. Then he reached into his coat pocket and held out a folded piece of paper. I opened it. It was a drawing of my house, crayon on notebook paper, with the word Grandma's written in green letters across the front door. I put that drawing on my refrigerator. It's still there. Jenna texted me once, in March 2024. Her message said, "You ruined our family." I didn't respond. I showed it to Patricia, who logged it. She said, "Don't engage. The agreement speaks for itself." I deleted the message but kept the screenshot in the blue folder. Some messages don't deserve an answer. They deserve a filing system. By spring 2024, my finances were fully restructured. Patricia helped me establish a revocable living trust with a corporate trustee. My house is titled in the trust now. My savings, currently $109,800, sit in accounts with no secondary signers, ever again. My new will names a local charity and a scholarship fund at Hillcrest Elementary as the primary beneficiaries. I left Derek a small inheritance, enough for him to know I didn't erase him entirely. But the house is protected. The savings are protected. I am protected. I went back to volunteering at the Boise Public Library, Tuesday and Thursday mornings. I help with the children's reading hour. I organize the donation shelf. On the first Tuesday of every month, I bring a plate of snickerdoodles. The children have started calling me the cookie lady. I've been called worse. My relationship with Derek is cautious, but it is rebuilding. He comes to dinner once a month now. He brings the kids every other Saturday. He doesn't mention money. He doesn't mention the house. He doesn't mention Jenna. One evening in April 2024, after Olivia and Mason had fallen asleep on the couch during a movie, Derek and I sat at the kitchen table with cups of coffee. It was quiet. Then he said, very softly, "I should have protected you, Mom. Instead, I was the one you needed protecting from." I nodded. I poured him another cup. That was enough. I didn't need more than that. My days have a rhythm now. Morning coffee at 6:30. A walk around the neighborhood at 7:15. Library on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Grocery shopping on Wednesdays. Phone calls with Linda on Sunday evenings. I read one novel a week. Mostly mysteries. I like a good mystery. I like knowing the truth comes out at the end. The manila folder and the blue folder are still in Carl's desk drawer. I haven't opened them in months, but I know they're there. Patricia told me to keep everything for 7 years. I plan to keep it longer than that. Not because I'm angry, because I earned it. Here's what I learned from all of this. Love doesn't mean letting someone take from you. Saying no doesn't mean you stopped caring. It means you started caring about yourself, maybe for the first time in a long time. It means you finally understood that your dignity is not a sacrifice you owe anyone, not even your own child. I'm 74 years old. I worked 28 years in a school library reading stories to children. I raised a son on my own after his father got sick. I buried my husband after 43 years of marriage. I survived betrayal from the one person I never thought would betray me. And I am still here, still standing, still baking cookies for other people's grandchildren on Tuesday mornings at the library. Dignity isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It's just still being you, after everything they put you through. So let me ask you something. If your own child cut you off, took money from your account without asking, tried to pressure you into signing over your home, and then called you 7 months later asking for $15,000 more, what would you have done? Would you have written the check? Would you have called the police right away? Would you have stayed silent and let it eat at you for years? Tell me. Write it in the comments. Even just a few words. I read every single one. Sometimes I read them twice. If this story meant something to you today, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't already. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. A mother, a grandmother, A friend who is carrying something heavy right now that she hasn't told a single person about yet. And tell me where you're watching from. I always want to know. I'll go first. I'm in Boise, Idaho. The snickerdoodles are cooling on the counter, and Carl's desk drawer is closed. That's all I need. Thank you, dear listeners. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time.